Stella McCartney grew up as a vegetarian on an organic farm. She graduated from Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design in 1995, and shortly thereafter became the creative director of Chloe. After deciding to launch her own business in 2001, it was only natural that her brand would reflect her strong views on animal rights. So no leather, no fur, no skins, no feathers. At first, it was not clear how this would impact the brand or its business model. But over the years, as McCartney and her team learned more about fashion's impact on the planet and its resources, they broadened their vision, making Stella McCartney the fashion world's first luxury brand with sustainability at its heart. Today, Stella McCartney is fashion's most influential change agent, having sparked industry-wide awareness and action on sustainability in fashion. As the Business of Fashion launches our 4th special print edition, 7 issues facing fashion now, we are delighted to sit down with Stella McCartney to learn more about her personal journey and spark a global conversation about sustainability in fashion on our new platform, BOF Voices. So, Stella, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me and to share your insights with our community of BOF readers who've joined us tonight. I wanted to start actually by just thinking about fashion very, very broadly and sustainability very broadly. Why do you feel that, beyond the statistics that I was just citing, why do you feel that the fashion industry must think about sustainability?
I think every industry must think about sustainability. I think, we're all living on this planet. We have limited resources, limited land. We have populations that are growing. And we all have to be conscious and responsible about how we consume and how we manufacture and how we source. And I think the fashion industry is the same. It's in the same boat. It's no different from everyone else. Every industry has to be mindful of how they go forward in their business. And sadly, luxury fashion is incredibly harmful, and fashion in general. And it needs to just get a bit more modern and kind of man up a bit.
Yeah. I mean, it's true that every industry, every one of us, every company, every organization has a role to play. But I'm wondering, what is it about the fashion industry, and especially at the luxury fashion level, that's prevented us from making more progress? If you actually look, it's really interesting this past few months as the team and I have been kind of doing a lot of research because, we were just learning about the issue as well. And, it strikes me when we started doing the research that the fashion industry really, especially at the luxury level, hasn't really thought about this that much. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it's been very, very slow to come into the room and to open its eyes. It's not very accountable, sadly. There aren't really very many rules and regulations set in place at a high level that can limit, the non-sustainable side of the industry. It's a big money-making business, and unless they have to change, they're not going to change. Its roots and foundations are based in very historical methods of manufacturing and sourcing, and there's this kind of sense in luxury fashion that all of this history and heritage is what makes it beautiful and expensive, and that's the greatness of luxury fashion. The older the houses, the better the houses.
Yeah.
The more money, the more margin it can demand. The reality is the older the house is, maybe the more stuck in the olden days it is. Mm-hmm. And the approach, it doesn't matter how old your business is or how young your business is, you have to move with the times.
Yeah. Well, your business is relatively young. I think you started in 2001, so that would make it about 14 years old. Right, but in those 14, pardon?
It's getting older every minute, it seems.
Older. In those 14 years, as you kind of pioneered this idea of, there not being a kind of, conflict between the idea of sustainability and the idea of luxury. Talk to us a little bit about the biggest challenges along the way. You and I spent some time discussing this before, and I think it was very edifying for me to just go through and listen to all of the different things that you thought about as you started putting, the values you had were very much grounded in your personal values. But then you decided to, take those values and apply them to your business. Along the way, what were the hardest things in kind of staying true to those values?
I mean, I think there are many things that are difficult about it. My journey, I've never worked with leather or fur. That has the biggest impact in a positive way for my business. It's one of the most negative impacts in the fashion industry on the earth and environmentally. So I've never done that. Even when I was at college and I had my degree show at St. Martin's, my shoes were made out of fabric. I've always done that. And along the way, I guess, I went to Paris. I went to a traditional fashion house that was started in the 40s, and they'd always worked with leather. And I came and I was creative director, and I was like, look, I'm not going to do that. And so, we had to change the way in which we approach the entire area of accessories. And that's not as easy. It doesn't even sound easy. So it's not as easy as it sounds, but it doesn't sound easy. So, that was a big challenge. And just the sort of mindset, changing and opening people's minds in this industry to approaching it in a different way. It's not always easy to do that. But, there are obvious challenges. Sourcing is difficult. The majority of shoes on this planet are made out of leather. So, when I make them I still make them in the finest factories in Italy. I have to train the people, the artisans that work with it. We have to work in a different way. We have to develop a lot of our own materials. It takes longer to manufacture our shoes. It can be up to 70% more expensive. So you're looking at margins. You're looking, I don't want to put that on my customer. There's many, many things that are challenging. But for me, at the end of the day, they're challenges that are worth taking. And we still have a healthy, growing business to show for it. So, it can be done.
Yeah. A lot of the questions that came through today from all over the world, as I mentioned earlier, were from other designers who, were inspired by the example that you've set. But the biggest question they had, a lot of them, was around sustainable materials. Teresa Austin asked, how have you dealt with the challenge of finding sustainable providers? We had Catalina Velasquez in Colombia, and she said, how did you engage with local producers and suppliers in the supply chain? And we had another designer from Bolivia, asking about, pleathers and, finding ways of working with kind of synthetic or, non-leather leathers, as you call them. How did you go about, sourcing and finding and convincing people that this was a way that might work?
Well, we're committed to it. So we make it our mission to establish relationships, long-term relationships with people all around the world, and to build programs. For example, in Argentina and Patagonia, we have a program currently working with wool. We're working with the local communities. We're giving them a source of income. We're training them. We're working with them for a long-term program. And not only are we treating the animals in an ethical manner, but we're also really looking at how we put back nutrients into the soil, because the wool industry and the fashion industry it rapes the land on a daily basis. So we're constantly working and finding partners that we can really establish these long-term relationships with, and we can give back. We can rejuvenate the soil, and we can do that long-term, and that is critical because, we've worked with many people along the way where you can get a fantastic organic cotton supplier. And one season, you're great. You've covered all your organic denim or your organic knit, your shirting. And the next season, there can be an economic crisis in that area of the world, and they're out of business, that supplier. Or there can be some kind of change in the weather, and and it's disappeared. So it's important to really build long-term relationships, and we work on that very mindfully. And it's part of how we, when we source fabrics now, we're mindful that, we don't want to work, for example, with the sort of wood pulp viscose. We're going to only work with sustainably sourced wood pulp viscoses, and we're going to work to actually remove it from our program of materials. So we're not perfect, but we have a plan, and our plan is every single season to better ourselves and to remove the bad and replace with the good.
One of the things that I found personally most shocking as I was doing the research with the team for this issue was around chemicals. And until you see it for yourself, it's really hard to fathom. We all wear clothes, right? We all wear garments every day, I hadn't really thought about the chemical process. You know, something like more than 8,000, up to 8,000 chemicals are used in the production of clothes. Let's take a look at a video from the NRDC, which is an organization that Stella works with, the Natural Resources Defense Council, and let's bring this a little bit to light.
The fashion industry has always been progressive, but when it comes to the environment, few designers even know the footprint of their own lines. That's why the Natural Resources Defense Council is helping designers understand and reduce their environmental impact while improving their bottom line. Through NRDC's program Clean by Design, fashion designers can be trendsetters in protecting the planet.
No one can visit China and not come back with that sort of visceral reaction of how contaminated the air and the water is there. Clean by Design is a program that targets the textile industry, and most people don't think much about the environmental impact of the fashion industry. But when you dye and finish fabric, it's a very heavy use of water, chemicals, and energy. And in fact, there's an expression that you know the color in fashion next season by the color of the rivers in China.
Kind of shocking when you think, you know, the color of the river running red, and you know that being linked to the trends that we see on the runway, and like making the connection between those things. You know, for me it was really personally really shocking. Can you talk to us on the chemicals issue?
I mean, they're a great organisation. We've worked with them many times. We're currently working with my partners Caring with factories in Italy. And it's great, you know, you're working together. I think that's very important. You're encouraging, you're not judging, you're not telling people off. You're just trying to give some points that might actually enhance everyone's businesses and also help the planet at the same time. So we work just looking at more efficient ways of manufacturing. So using less energy, less water. It's doable. And when they've done it, they've actually found that the people that run the factories have really responded because they've actually saved money as well. Yeah. So it's a great program. And but the chemicals in the fashion industry are extraordinary, really, when you think about it. And sadly, leather, and you know, that is one of the most harmful areas of using chemicals. The toxins in the tanneries are extraordinary because, you know, it's there to make a natural material that would naturally biodegrade, not biodegrade. Yeah. So that's quite heavy stuff. There can be, you know, massive amounts of leads and formaldehydes, and you know, it's not a luxurious method, even though it's for a luxurious industry, and it's just very, very harmful to the people that come into contact with it also, sadly.
Yeah. You raised an interesting point just now about how some of the factories actually, by adhering to or, you know, following some of the principles by organizations or set by organizations like the NRDC, actually save money. And I think, you know, this is part of the kind of sustainable fashion movement. I think that might be the least well understood, but was one of the most salient insights for me as we did this issue. You know, one of my team members and I actually went down to Morocco and visited a factory where they were making denim, and they were putting into place a new water treatment facility. And you know, although it was going to cost them a lot of money to put in this facility, it was also actually going to save them money. Yeah. So, you know, as we think about the business of sustainable fashion, as it were, there's actually a lot that fashion companies can benefit from in terms of saving money. Yeah. You know, what has been your experience with that as a business?
I mean, you know, denim is a great example of a really easy material to make in an organic way. We use, the majority of our denim is organic, so it's a great example. And also the use of using less water. We have, you know, we've worked in programs currently where we have an injection dyeing process. So you use no water at all in printing a T-shirt or something. And you know, the exciting thing is like, it's where fashion meets technology, and for me that's something really missing in this sector of the industry. It doesn't really exist, and that's what I find that really, really exciting. Not answering your question at all there.
That's
the
okay.
Saving of money, you know what, it's weird. It's not the thing that drives me. We're not necessarily saving money. You know, when I spoke again of our margins earlier on, you know, For example, if you import a non-leather good into the United States, you can be taxed up to 30% more. So there's all of these sort of weird historical laws set in place to encourage, I guess, sort of local leather farming in America from the 30s or something that is sort of still set in place. So we don't necessarily think about it that we're saving money.
But for example, in your stores, right, a lot of the stores are set up as eco-efficient stores.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
so
absolutely.
the amount of energy used, electricity, etc. is going
Well, we're
to be...
definitely, I mean, our lighting is obviously sort of, LED, and we all of those things they're longer lasting. So it is this idea that you invest and your return longer term is greater. But we also, most of our stores are wind powered where we can, and for us it's really part of our everyday way of thinking, and it's really about just approaching the business in a mindful, responsible way. So we want to grow we have a business, which is unheard of in the fashion industry, really, for a lot of brands, and especially a brand that's trying to be more sustainable in its approach. So, we want to show a healthy growth, because for me, sadly, most people are driven by money, and that if we can show that we can actually be more mindful and create a product that's less harmful, and we can still have a really successful business, then I think it's kind of a win-win, and hopefully then more people will follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Another one of the questions that came through today on social media, and I have to put a plug in here, they came from my alma mater at McGill University in Montreal, so I was very happy to see this. They said, Stella, for our technology, innovation, and sustainability class, we have chosen to do a project on Stella McCartney. And we were wondering, in the competitive high fashion industry, apart from profit, do you think that being a sustainable business gives you a competitive advantage? In what other ways has this sustainable ethos of yours helped you as a business?
I mean, it's definitely our point of difference. I think we're having this conversation because it's what we do and other houses don't do it. So, I think anyone can have a conversation about having a nice fashion label. And, it's definitely, it gives us some, point of difference, which I think is interesting. But apart from that, I think we're very open-minded, and we have a very open-minded approach. For us, we really can do anything. We're not afraid of anything. We're excited by anything different. So we can meet with different technologies, we can meet with food companies, we can meet with, tech companies, and we can be quite open-hearted and open-minded. We're not afraid of it. So I think that gives us an edge, if you like.
Is that about risk-taking, like just being willing to try new things? In an industry especially that's been, as you mentioned earlier, that's quite risk-averse or stuck in its ways.
We're excited by risk. We're excited by thinking outside of the box. We think that's modern. And I think the fashion industry is supposed to be modern. And I find it so extraordinarily old-fashioned at times that I can't really get my head around it. The fact we're even having this conversation it seems medieval to me, that the industry is still based on killing hundreds of millions of animals for fur and leather a year and not being accountable for the chemicals that entails, the land mass that entails, the watering holes that entails, the cruelty that entails. It's not a modern approach to any industry. Even the food industry has to be more mindful of how it sources. Why are we not setting rules in place, and why are we not asking ourselves questions now?
Sure. Another part of the multifaceted, complex problem of sustainability lies with the role consumers can play, right? So there's things that governments can do in terms of regulation and policy. There's things that companies like yours can do in terms of operating in a different way and trying to do things in a more sustainable way. But consumers can also drive the agenda. Consumer
is king, in my opinion. For me, I've always, from day one, I work for the women that come into my life or they encounter my product. I serve them, and I'm proud to do so. And there's so many things that we can do that we don't even really tell our consumer about, because at the end of the day, I'm a fashion designer, and if I design something that's unattractive, I don't think they're going to care much for it anyway. But we use a recycled viscose in the linings of all of our bags that are old plastic bottles. I mean, there's things like that we don't even tell our consumer. But I think people are more savvy and want more. I don't think that some of these big corporations in the fashion industry actually give the consumer enough credit, personally.
Yeah. Well, several, some of the other questions that came through were talking about cost, and one of them said, how do we make sustainable fashion accessible when the largest majority of consumers have been conditioned to think fast fashion prices are fair and anything more isn't?
Oh my God, I know that's a really hard one. I mean, I guess the one thing you can say for sort of luxury fashion is it is creating a product that will last you your lifetime. You can hand it down to your children or your friends, and it has a lifespan that will go beyond yours, hopefully, just in the quality of its make and manufacture. So that in itself is more sustainable than fast fashion or high street fashion. And it's a really tricky one, that. I mean, you know, people, it's very political, I think, you know, but I mean, I'd much rather buy, I always grew up on second-hand vintage clothes, you know, that was like, well, I got excited by that. I didn't want to know that I might bump into someone at a party and 3 other people were wearing the dress because it was accessible and it cost £5, you know.
Right.
But I think it is just training yourself into appreciating the products that you have in your life, you know. Less is more, I guess, in my mind. But it's a really tricky one, that, because that's a whole nother debate.
Yeah. Well, we'll continue that debate next week on BOF. You know, there's a lot of other fashion designers in the room tonight who've come here to listen to you.
Like that.
No, but I think there's you know, if there was one thing that, you know, if there's young designers here, you know, Dame Vivienne Westwood is here. We have
There's a dame in the house.
Yeah, we have Peter Pilato here. You know, we have designers here, you know, who are at different stages of their business. If there's one thing that, as a designer, you know, the first step, what would it be to make your business more sustainable? Where do you start?
I'm a very big believer in something is better than nothing. I really, you know, we're not perfect, and I think the smallest thing can have an impact. I mean, I would say take PVC out of your language, remove that from your business. It's the most harmful and toxic plastic on the planet. Take it out. You don't need to use it. And it would help me if you did, because, you know, when I want to make a sequin top, I'm limited because all the sequins in the world have PVC. And I'm like, can somebody help me and create some demand so I can have some more colours and some more sequins, please? But I'd take out PVC. I would just be more mindful, and I'd try one pair of shoes out of an alternative natural fibre or a synthetic fibre. Try it. Just try and use, you know, sustainable woods when you do. So, or just ask your fabric person to look out for some things. You don't have to do it that season. You can do it next season. Look at all your recycled materials that are in stock. You know, many houses burn the thousands and thousands of meters that they have. Don't do that. Create a little recycle project that's a limited edition. You know, just approach your business in a different way. Look at it in a different way. Ask questions, push your team, and push yourself. It's way more fun. Yeah. It's harder, and it's, you know, it can be frustrating at times, but it can be extremely rewarding and really exciting.
Yeah. We have time for a few questions from the audience. Yes,
I was afraid of that.
Dame Vivienne Westwood has a question. Do we have a microphone?
I was criticised recently for making plastic shoes. Animal rights people say, but leather's much more harmful. It's very, very difficult to know what it is. I mean, the shoes you're wearing, are they really more ethical than a pair of leather shoes that's already been, an animal's been killed for it?
Yes.
And we've got to get from here to where we want to go. And I was just thinking, well, use all these animal skins and everything, you know?
No, I know what you're saying, but they are more, they're more environmentally friendly. It's 20 times more harmful to the planet to use leather than use a natural fibre or even a synthetic fibre, because the energy that is used, the toxins, the tanneries, the water, the landmass, is 20 times more inefficient. Fact. So absolutely, if you remove leather from your diet in fashion, you are 20 times less harmful. That's a fact.
That's an incredible figure. I
It's
mean,
an
I've
incredible
tried
figure.
to find out, and it's like, well, it's a bit of this and a
No,
bit of
it's
that,
20%
and I
more.
was not able to make
20
any
times
kind
more,
of
sorry.
decision.
It's 20 times more.
Yeah, and I wonder where we get all this expert advice from. I mean, I'll have to keep in touch with you about that, obviously. But, for example, I thought that viscose was it was better than polyester, which is made from fossil fuel, because it's just made from trees and whatever. But and I haven't got very far, obviously.
No, well, I'm going to help you, and I can't wait to help you. You can come and work with me. Come and be my right hand, Vivian. I would have you happily.
This warms my heart, because this is exactly what we
Come
want to
to
do.
me.
Well, Stella, I need a right hand.
All right, well, hey, you know what? You have a pretty good one in the room. But I'll come to you 2 days a week. You come to me 2 days a week, and we'll take Friday off to be with our kids. No, it is. Leather is definitely more harmful. And viscose, like I said before, it can... If you source it from a sustainable wood pulp, you're already doing better. The best thing is to remove all these things, but it's hard and it's a slow process. But that's what I'm just trying to remove it. But there's no way to be perfect. And I think it's really important to just be okay with that. It's allowed. We're not perfect. But leather is definitely the most harmful. I mean, there's a fifth of the Amazon rainforest over the last 30 years has been deforested, and 70% of that is cattle. And leather is part of that. You know, leather is not really a byproduct. I think it's a myth, because I don't imagine the finest cut of beef for them to peel the leather off, you know, before they do it and go, okay, this is Vivian's next handbag. I just don't see it happening. And, you know, fur certainly has no byproduct whatsoever involved. And, you know, there's millions and millions of animals. I think more rabbits are killed for fur than for food. So, you know, it's just not, it's not the greatest part. And it's one of the easiest ones to bring out. I used to have a conversation, though, many years ago. I had it with my dad, and we were like, why don't you just use the leather of sacred cows? I was like, I can do that, right? They're sacred. They live an old life. Get the leather. Like, actually, we can do that. So, you know, you can do that. I just get note to self, I gave Vivian Westwood that idea. Okay? When it becomes but, you know, that's probably the safest way to use leather, I would think.
I just wanted to say that I've sort of tried and found it more or less impossible, the people I've spoken to. I've got tit for tat and no real answer.
There's always a pro and a
you've been
con.
working hard on it, and I will, you know, I mean, there is a way out of it, apparently. So
you're coming to work with me next week.
I'll come and see, yeah, okay. Thanks,
no, I mean,
Stella.
you know,
Bye.
Vivian, and this is a personal conversation. But also, you know, I've been doing this from day one, and it's a slow journey, and you have to, you know, and every season you learn. Every single season we learn something. You know, I didn't know viscose wasn't good 5 years ago. You only just start learning out this stuff. You know, I didn't know PVC was awful until I worked with Adidas, where they're more mindful of, because the sporting arena is more accountable. And so you're learning every single day. You know, I'm trying to better myself. I still have areas that I'm not perfect in. You know, I have conventional materials that I use also. But I would gladly give you my information sheet, and I would love it, Vivian. I'd be very proud to do so.
I think that's the whole point of this kind of conversation, actually. Is, you know, one of the things that struck me as we were talking, Stella, was that, you know, at the very beginning, it's almost like you didn't know what you were getting into. And it just kind of, over the years, you and your team have developed some really valuable expertise that, you know, hopefully we can be a part of sharing with the wider fashion community. When we first embarked on this journey to bring these key fashion issues to light, we hoped to spark a conversation and help advance solutions that we can all be a part of in terms of making a difference. So I hope you'll all join us for the unveiling of BOF Voices next week. Please use the hashtag BOF Voices when you're sharing it on social media, and participate in getting this onto the global fashion agenda. I hope you agree with me and our team at BOF that these are really, really important issues. So thanks all for coming. Thanks, Stella, and enjoy the drinks.